If you've been a longtime fan of the Undertale and Deltarune community, you should know about the 7 human souls. Now, some of the memes are hilarious. 6 rotating objects feeding 1 red object in the middle. But what if this also was applied into Deltarune as well? Although we don't get to see many of the souls, we do get to see some traits and some behaviors within the bosses themselves. Before we begin though, I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer to the people watching this video though. First off, there are spoilers for chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune, so if you haven't played that yet, go and play so now. You have been warned. Secondly, even if you have done the chapters, make sure you have done the secret bosses before so that you can avoid being spoiled. And just remember, this is a theory. Now, here's the Deltarune Souls theory. Now, if you remember your experience from Undertale, you may remember that some bosses gave you special soul modes. For example, Papyrus, making your soul blue, forcing you to jump, or Undyne green, forcing you to block and not move at all. However, using the ball game, we know that the human soul traits actually have names. Like Cyan has patience, Orange has bravery. You can look up a whole chart if you really want to. However, due to a lack of humans in Deltarune, you may think that the 7 human souls aren't relevant. However, the secret bosses hold the key, as each of them relates to a soul trait in one way or another. Whether it be in a character's lore or in the gameplay itself, you can find traits of the human souls in them. Now, although we only started the theory, we've already reached an interesting case, Jeviling. As you may know, Jeviling doesn't have an interesting soul mode that you can play with, instead giving you the basic red. And based on his lore, there shouldn't be a soul trait, right? Wait, hold on, who has my script? Jeviling's battle is the first battle that introduces TP to use Axe. However, the key lies in not only just the axe, but also how to gain TP in this specific battle. As you see, Hypnosis has an interesting description where while it uses all your actions for your party, it also decreases the attack power on Jeviling's next attack while inducing highest level of tire you can.
If you observe Jeviling's attack closely, there's usually a little spot where you can gain a lot of TP quickly. Usually when you're starting out, you tend to learn to avoid the attacks first. However, if we take a look at a speedrun, speedrunners want to typically complete the game faster, so they're going to take more risks to get there. And an interesting pattern arises where Jeviling's attacks are very high risk, high reward, giving more TP for a very risky dodge inside. Using this information, we can classify Jeviling as the Bravery Soul.
With not only his attacks being incredibly risky to dodge, but giving a high reward, his acts also rely on a hint of bravery. Regardless of attacking or sparing him, you'll need that TP, and in order to get TP, you need to be brave about it. Now, for our favorite 1997 salesman, Spamton G. Spamton, the big shot. Now for Spamton Neo Spite, we noticed that he uses the Yellow Soul, aka the Justice Soul, as seen in Undertale. However, we don't have any particular reason normally of why specifically yellow. Some theorize that it's just because Metaton Neo, and yeah, that's pretty funny and all, but let's take a quick review on his lore really quick, just so that we are on the same page. When we first discover Spamton, he's found in a garbage dump, living in the worst life possible, yeah. We know from some evidence that from the secret mantle boss fight that there are actually evidence that Spamton was pretty successful as he's worked with Tenna, but later abandoned him around the same time that his phone calls stopped coming in. When he eventually gets Neo form, he finds that he's still a puppet despite his new capabilities. Frustrated by this, he attacks Chris to get their soul so that he can break free from the limitations. However, if you're determined enough, you can eventually get the fight to end. The endings are all on the same theme of justice. Snapping Spamton's wires is justice from the puppeteer, finally allowing Spamton to be his own person instead of being a puppet on strings. whereas fighting Spamton is justice from you, from how Spamton treated you. However, none of this actually shows Spamton as the just one, except for one particular instance. Snowgrave route, aka the weird route, aka I'm going to commit murder and also traumatize 2 teenagers because I feel like it. It seems unnecessary to keep the Snowgrave route in this. However, we need to use this to keep in line with Spamton's Justice Soul. In this route, you track down every single little enemy, from actual threatening enemies to the smallest mouse, in order to kill them and add them to your kill count, but basically eradicating everyone, including Birdly, which is actually pretty bad considering that he's a lightener. Therefore, you're actually dealing actual harm to actual people now. In this new context, Spamton encounters you, not as a secret boss, but actually as the final boss of the end route. Meaning that he's standing up to you, compared to everyone else who ran away, he's standing up to you. Although it be for selfish reasons, he's delivering justice this way.
But unfortunately, this can never last.
As of writing this script, we still have a problem. We have 2 secret bosses in this game, and the community still can't decide which one. If you don't know which one it is, it's the Shadow Mantle, aka John Mantle, aka what I like to call him, the Hollow Knight, or the Roaring Knight. So, which one are we going to talk about? Actually, it's going to be both of them. Let's start with the Roaring Knight. The funniest thing about the Knight is that we actually don't know very much about them. The only thing we do know is that they are the main antagonist, but we don't know anything about their identity or any clues or whatsoever. Even then, we have a bunch of theories, but nobody can seem to agree who the Knight is. So once again, we're going to have to rely on attack patterns to figure out the source code again. Looking closely, however, we can find a very common trait. Look at the soul and when it moves. It doesn't move very often, does it? And you might think, oh wait, that's just one attack or something. But no, this happens again, and again, and again, and again. I remember this attack in particular. Everyone was complaining about it because everyone kept getting swooned, but that was because they were moving too much. Now, before that we get into the soul trait, we actually have one more thing. We also have to talk about the frickin' mantle. Funny enough, I actually only got this part of the theory thanks to both Shay and Mystic Slime. Shay being an Undertale Deltarune speedrunner, and Mystic Slime being an Undertale Deltarune fan game enjoyer. This distinction is actually really important for the next few clips. Mystic starts by analyzing the threat first, preparing to dodge out of the way using the information he uses. He also prioritizes waiting and getting out of the way of damage first. This will prove a very useful asset later on. Mystic then attempts to take out the friends early on, trying to use whatever they can while also keeping themselves safe. On their first step of this run, they ending up on phase 3. That is pretty good for the first try. However, on the Shay side of things, Shay wastes no time already going in to damage the Hollow Knight. However, speedrunner instincts do not just go away. They come back and to haunt Shay.
Oh shit, it's doing damage.
Although Shay tries to beat the boss faster, it ends up taking more of a toll on Shay than they think. Shay keeps going into unsafe predictions, not waiting for it attacks to become safe, and ends up getting cornered.
Noted.
Counting all the attempts together, Mystic Slime takes 3 attempts, while Shay takes 4 times that, 12 attempts. So, the key to this? Patience. Patience is a great thing to have in both of these fights. One has limited room and not very ideal mechanics, while the other requires very, very carefully timing your dodges. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. Gerson is probably the easiest secret boss to find his trait, since number 1, he also uses it, But 2, everyone can clearly see why Gerson wields the green soul, which stands for kindness. We can go over this in so many ways, but we'll start off with his fight. At this point in his fight, he's training Susie so that Susie can be more prepared to take matters into her own hands, teaching her not to be scared of attacking, but also honing her so that she can be smarter. I also find it very interesting that the thing that helps Gerson's battle the most is Ultimate Heal, which happens to be the color green like any good healing spell. Very coincidental, eh? Outside of battle, we also see Gerson's acts of kindness while in the story. For example, letting Susie prove her heal abilities by accidentally, or should we say purposefully, dropping a paper so that he has to pick it up and let Jackenstein get healed instead. Gerson could easily overpower Susie like a bad mentor would. However, Gerson perfectly allows Susie to have a chance to defend herself and prepare, even though she may not expect it yet. Susie even later in the game goes on to say that Gerson is probably one of her favorite mentors because he's the only one that didn't make her feel stupid. And thanks to the way Gerson is written, we can really say that Gerson truly can wield the kindness soul, and that's that. Okay, we really need to talk about this boss fight. The Sound of Justice can also use the Green Soul. However, it's in a very much different stance compared to how we see it. Because despite how Gerson uses it, the Sound of Justice does not use it very similarly at all. While it still allows her to block bullets, it doesn't allow her to see where they're coming from unless you turn on audio cues. However, I have theory to believe that the Green Soul, in this case, is not coming from the Sound of Justice, but rather one of the party members. Here, in Gerson's fight, Gerson always gives a clear indicator about when he's going to switch your soul red. However, the Sound of Justice does not do that. Instead, you turn red on instinct because of the sound waves he gives. Also, can we just acknowledge the fact that the Sound of Justice's aura is red during the boss fight, but green outside of it? Now, to limit it down, we need to figure out who has it then. It can't be Susie, because in the Gerson boss fight, when Gerson first turns green, Susie tells Chris to help her out over there. However, we also know it's not Chris, because even when Chris is down, we still dodge. So the only possible option is us. We're the Green Soul in this case. Now, I don't speak for everybody because I'm not sure about how everyone plays, but most players have bonded with the characters already, and because of that, we want to protect them even during this new scary situation, which is why we switch the soul nodes. We are the kindness soul too. If that isn't convincing enough, the light is the same color that we use when we use Unleash or similar acts. So, you also need to keep in mind that every time an arrow comes closer, the closer it gets, our soul shines brighter about where to dodge to protect your friends. The human souls are apparently not lost to time yet, for they still show up in the secret bosses and through the characteristics or bullet patterns. However, Toby Fox is very tricky, and he's disproven all of our theories so far, so who knows what will happen. Maybe we will get a Patience boss fight. Maybe we will get a Bravery boss fight. Maybe Susie will be a secret boss against Rouse, showing the purple soul off so that Rouse can learn to break free of the bonds of control. But who knows? All I know is that Toby Fox is making a masterpiece here, and I don't mind if I'm wrong, because I had fun making this video, and I think Toby also wants us to have fun making theories about his game that we don't even know much about yet. And that's great, because I can't wait to see what the future will hold. Thanks for watching, and have a good rest of your day.